Hey guys, I'm Mark from A Portion of Sport and welcome to week 7 of the Premier League review. If you are new to this series, what we do is we take a look at the weekend results, we take a look at the Premier League table and we finish off with the top goal scorers. So here is a list of the Premier League results from the weekend. If you want to hear about a certain game, be sure to click on the game and you'll be taken to the game. But without further ado, let's get in to our first match. We start off with Tottenham versus Manchester City. It was a battle of the undefeated this week as the only two teams that remain undefeated went head to head as Tottenham took on Manchester City at White Hart Lane. Many people would have had Manchester City continuing their 100% start to the season, but a spanner was thrown into the works 9 minutes into the match when Danny Rose swings in a cross from the left and City defender Alexander Kolarov swings his foot at the ball. He missed the ball and it bounced into his own goal off of his thigh. And Tottenham would double their lead 20 minutes later when Eric Lamela steals the ball off of a Manchester City player before he plays it to Dele Alli. He tries to find Son Heung-min, but the ball is intercepted and for some reason City just didn't clear it. Spurs were able to capitalise as they played the ball back to Ali, who was able to slot home under Claudio Bravo. It looked like Tottenham were about to add another one to their tally when Manchester City give away a penalty as Dele Alli was fouled as he was about to take a shot. Eric Lamela steps up to take it, but Claudio Bravo gets down to his left and saves the spot kick. And that is how the game would end, Manchester City suffering their first defeat of the Premier League season, and to be honest, they looked really bad out there. Surely they played bad because they were without their star man Kevin De Bruyne, but Tottenham looked class. People are talking about Liverpool as dark horses for the title, and surely Tottenham are in the conversation as the only team left to be beaten this season. And we'll move on to Hull versus Chelsea. We didn't have any action in the first half as Hull were defending very well and were able to keep Chelsea from having a decent attempted goal. And they were also able to keep Chelsea dangerman Diego Costa from getting into the game. Hull's defence would be cracked in the second half in the 60th minute when Willian curls in a shot from about 18 yards out. It came from when he checks back onto his left foot before dispatching the ball into the net. 5 minutes later, Chelsea would add another one and Diego Costa is the man who grabs another goal on his way to possibly getting the golden boot at the end of the season. But it was Nemanja Matic who created the chance after he ploughed forward from deep and took a shot that deflected, and Diego Costa was able to pick up the scraps by firing the ball into the top corner. And that is how the game would end. Looks like the Chelsea of old are back with good passing, great attacking, and to be fair, they probably should have been 2-0 up in the first half, but Hull did well to fend off the Chelsea attackers in the first half, but the result is a fair one for both teams. And we move on to Swansea versus Liverpool. Liverpool were looking to get their 4th league win in a row in the early game on Saturday, but Swansea would look to stop these plans when they took the lead in the 8th minute when Swansea would capitalise from Liverpool's dodgy defending. It came from when Swansea played a corner into the Liverpool box and Borja Baston heads it back across goal for Leroy Fer to easily tap in. Swansea would keep the lead into the half-time break as Liverpool played their worst football of the season in the first half. But 10 minutes into the second half, Liverpool would equalise when Felipe Coutinho hits a free kick straight into the Swansea wall. The ball cannons into the air and Jordan Henderson puts the ball back into the box, and Roberto Firmino finds himself in a ton of space and calmly heads home into the bottom corner. After Liverpool scored, the game turned. Liverpool got back into the game and started to play the way that they have been all season. And in the 83rd minute, their second half performance paid off when Roberto Firmino is nudged over in the Swansea area and the referee points towards the spot, and Liverpool get a penalty. James Milner steps up and of course he scores it. He scored 4 goals this season and all of them have came from penalties. And that is how the game would end. Liverpool would continue their great start to the season with another win even after that shaky first half performance. This result keeps Liverpool in the top 4 this weekend and also leaves Swansea in the bottom 5. And we'll move on to Burnley versus Arsenal. The game went into the half-time 0-0 and Arsenal had barely any chances, mainly because of Burnley's brilliant defending. They were able to keep the Gunners at bay. Burnley were able to keep Arsenal from scoring up until the 93rd minute when Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain wins a corner for his side. Mesut Ozil takes the corner, somehow Theo Walcott wins a header and he sends it towards the far post and Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain hits an awkward shot and it comes off of the elbow of Laurent Koscielny and Arsenal win it right at the end. A handball is enough to give Arsenal the win and I feel quite sorry for Burnley. They really defended well and they deserved a point for their efforts, but a goal is a goal even though it was handball and Arsenal came away with all 3 points. And we move on to Watford versus Bournemouth. The game was looking like it was going to be a boring first half with no action, but in the 30th minute, out of nowhere really, Bournemouth would come forward with a rare attack and take the lead. It came when Callum Wilson gets his head on a Junior Stanislas cross and a little deflection takes the ball past Aurelio Gomez. But this game certainly livened up in the second half. It started 4 minutes into the second half when Nordin Amrabat shows class on the wing before playing it to Troy Deeney to get his 99th goal for Watford. Bournemouth would retake the lead 10 minutes later when substitute substitute Joshua King picks up the ball inside the Watford half and then charges forward before striking from about 25 yards out and finding the net. 2 minutes later, Watford would level the score again, and it was a successful header from Isaac Success. Do you get it? No? Okay. Stupid jokes aside, Isaac Success is able to rise above the Bournemouth defenders and heads in past Artur Boruc. If you only watched the first half of this game, then I'm sorry. The game really kicked into sixth in the second half, as both teams seemed more hungry for the ball and the goals. A point is probably a fair result for both teams. And we move on to Everton versus Crystal Palace. Everton and Crystal Palace went head to head on Friday, and the game took 40 minutes to get going, as before that the game was pretty dead. But in the 39th minute, Everton would have a free kick in a dangerous space, and Everton would take full advantage of the situation when Romelu Lukaku steps up to take the free kick, and he curls the ball over the wall and into the left side of the net with a beautiful effort. But Crystal Palace would come back into the game like they did last week, and it came from the same man that got the winning goal last week, when Christian Benteke gets on the end of a Joel Ward cross and powerfully heads it into the Everton goal past Martin Stekelenburg. Crystal Palace would have the ball in the back of the net 10 minutes later, but the goal wouldn't count as it was ruled as offside. But the assistant got the decision wrong. It happened when the ball was crossed in and Damien Delaney gets his head onto it and headers in, and this is where the controversy comes into play. The assistant got one thing right: a Crystal Palace player was offside, but the player was James Tompkins, not the man who put the ball in the net, Delaney. Bad decision from the assistant ref, and the game carried on all square. And the game would finish all square, neither team could grab that winning goal. This must be a frustrating result for Everton, who dominated the first half but crucially let Palace back into the game in the second, but a well-deserved point for Palace nonetheless. And we'll move on to Sunderland versus West Brom. For the first 35 minutes, Sunderland were enjoying the majority of possession and really looked like they could record their first win of the season. However, West Brom would go ahead and score completely against the run of play. It came from when Matt Phillips released Nasser Chadli and the former Spurs player sorts the ball in at the far post. The game went silent and it looked like the game was going to end 1-0 for the away side, but in the 83rd minute, Sunderland were able to grab a point, and it came from substitute Patrick van Aanholt. He loops the ball into the net following a commanding run forward from Duncan Watmore. And that is how the game would end, Sunderland finally picking up a point, ending their run of 3 losses in a row, and West Brom continuing their steady start to the season. And we move on to West Ham versus Middlesbrough. The game only had one shot on target in the first half, and it came from Middlesbrough. They also had the majority of the possession in the first half as well. But the game would finally get a goal 6 minutes into the second half, and it was the visitors Middlesbrough who would open the score. It came from when Borough win a corner and Victor Fisher whipped the ball in, and Christian Stuani rises highest and sends the ball home with his head. Mark Noble was arguing with the ref, claiming that it didn't go over the line, but the goal decision system clearly showed that it did, and the goal stands. But West Ham equalised only 4 minutes later, and it came from their wonderman Dimitri Payet. He picks the ball up on the left and glides past Martin de Roon, and then continues to run across the box and past 3 more defenders whilst he's at it, before firing a low shot into the net. Let's be honest, West Ham fans, you don't deserve Payet. He is simply too good for your club. And that is how the game would end, with West Ham and Middlesbrough sharing the points. This result will please the travelling Borough fans more than the Iron supporters, because the atmosphere around the London Stadium is becoming more and more negative, with a lot of people believing they will go down this season, and this is the first point they have picked up since the second week of the season. And we move on to Manchester United versus Stoke. Manchester United were dominant for mainly all of the game, but it would take until the 70th minute before they could break the deadlock. It came from when Stoke midfielder Xherdan Shaqiri gives away the ball in the centre circle. Anthony Martial is on the left before he plays it to Wayne Rooney. Rooney gets tackled, but the ball falls nicely back to Martial and he bends the ball home. But Stoke would equalise in the 81st minute to really steal a point from Old Trafford. It came from when Glenn Johnson shoots from outside the box, but David De Gea makes a mess of it. Jonathan Walters takes a shot, but De Gea palms the ball onto the bar, and the ball spins to Joe Allen, who was there to smash it in from point blank range. And that is how the game would end, a massive point for Mark Hughes and Stoke, and 2 points dropped for Manchester United. Paul Pogba again proving why he isn't worth 90 million, as he should have scored about 3 goals in this game. But let's not take anything away from Stoke, and especially their keeper Lee Grant, who played phenomenally well and was the main reason Stoke were able to keep it goalless for so long. And finally, we have Leicester versus Southampton. It was 0-0. I don't know what else to say. Southampton keep another clean sheet and Leicester continue struggling to win. I don't know, lads. It was boring. So that's all the fixtures I've got for you this week. Before we go, let's take a look at the Premier League table and top goal scorers. First, let's take a look at the Premier League table. So starting with the top 5, as you can see, Manchester City are still top of the Premier League despite losing this week. The team they lost to, Tottenham, are second and are the only unbeaten team left. Arsenal are third after their scrappy win at Burnley. They are tied on point with 4th place Liverpool, but their goal difference puts them in 4th. And Everton make up the top 5 following Friday's draw with Crystal Palace. Moving on to the bottom 5, as you can see, Sunderland are still looking for their first win of the season, and that leaves them in last. Also, Stoke are yet to win, but them picking up draws is enough to see them in 19th place. West Ham continue to struggle, and this week's draw leaves them in the final relegation place. Swansea are 17th following this week's loss to Liverpool, and newly promoted Middlesbrough are 16th with 6 points after this week's draw at West Ham. Right, let's move on to the top goal scorers. As you can see, Diego Costa added another one to his tally this week with his goal against Hull. Romelu Lukaku is second following his brilliant free kick this week against Crystal Palace. Sergio Aguero is still third, even though he didn't get a goal and he was pretty much silent in the game against Tottenham. Mikel Antonio also manages to stay in the top 5 despite not scoring this week, and Son Heung-min comes into the top 5 for the first time. Despite not scoring, he got himself an assist, and that boosts him up into 5th place. Right, so that's all I've got for you this week. There won't be an episode next week because there isn't any Premier League games next week due to World Cup qualifiers, but I'll be back in 2 weeks' time where we have Liverpool versus Manchester United to look forward to. But anyway, if you want to follow me on Twitter or subscribe to my personal YouTube channel, the links are both in the description down below. I've got a Crash Bandicoot video coming out tomorrow when you're watching this, Wednesday, and I've got a Journey video actually coming out on Saturday where we play as Alex Hunter, and I'm not going to spoil which team I go to. But yeah, other than that, I've been Mark from A Portion of Sport, and I will see you in 2 weeks for the next episode of the Premier League Review.